When the temperature drops, I've got a simple hack for keeping your urban worm bag humming throughout the winter. We're going to cover that on today's episode of Coffee and Compost. My name is Steve Churchill, and this is the Urban Worm Company. Guys, this is an easy one today. We're nearing freezing temps here at Urban Worm HQ, but I'm not sweating it. Even if temps get well below freezing, I know my worms are going to be just fine. And assuming you've got nearby electrical access, yours will be fine too. But first, let's review the temperatures that worms need in order to survive and thrive. The book answer is that most composting worms, especially the red wiggler, need temperatures in the vermicompost to stay between 55 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, with 72 degrees being optimal. As you approach the higher end of that scale, you'll find that the worms are perfectly happy at 85, maybe even 90 degrees, and then dead at 100. As you approach the lower end, the worms are not nearly in the danger they're in at higher temps. Processing and reproduction slows, and the worms may start getting scrawny, but I'd even say that even if you let your vermicompost get down into the 40s, that your worms will survive just fine. They just won't be eating that much. But we want to keep your bin's waste processing capacity high throughout the winter, so let's do what we can to keep those temps at optimal levels. A couple years back, I experimented with various ways to heat my worm bin. I tried overfeeding to boost microbial activity. That kind of works, but you risk overdoing it and ending up with a stinky bin. I tried insulation, but that made accessing my worm bin difficult. When we used our Michigan Soilworks CFT, we tried using space heaters to warm the air under plastic tenning. That was super awkward and it dried out the surface of the vermicompost way too much. I even used incandescent rope lighting like you see here in this picture to create heat for beds on the floor of my barn, but almost burnt the place down when the rope coiled onto itself and started overheating. Then I stumbled upon a way to deliver a nice, even, low-level heat to the surface of the vermicompost in my urban worm bag without drying out the surface too much. I started using a seed starting or seed germination mat with a thermostat and a temperature probe, and I haven't looked back since. It's super simple. And luckily there's a heat mat that's perfectly sized for the urban worm bag. Okay, real fast. Some of you may be interested in discounts on urban worm products like the urban worm bag. If so, all you need to do is click the link you see on your screen. I'll text you a discount code that you can use on most of our products today. So when the temperatures approach 40 degrees at night here in the Philly area, I put a 20-inch by 20.75-inch seed starting mat by Vivosun into my bag. I don't know where that extra 3/4 of an inch comes in, but I'm sure that they put it there for a reason. Now, of course, these mats are normally used for, as the name suggests, seed starting, which most gardeners do in the early spring. Obviously, we're using it for something a little different. Without the thermostat, the manufacturers say that the mat should deliver a temperature that's about 20 degrees higher than the ambient temperature. Now, I don't trust the seed starting mat is smart enough to know what the outside air temperature is, so I bought an optional thermostat and temperature probe, which allows me to make sure that I deliver enough heat to my worm bin without frying the surface of my vermicompost. I set the thermostat for 72 degrees and I stopped thinking about it until I removed the heat mat in March or April of the following year. The mat also gives me the side benefit of trapping a little moisture on the surface of my vermicompost. The condensation formed on the bottom of the mat, plus the added heat, is attractive to the worms and keeps them closer to the surface in my urban worm bag, and it will do the same in any other bin for that matter. According to the manufacturer, the heat is supposed to radiate upwards through the printed side of the heat mat. For the most heat, you may want to use this upside down in your bin, but personally I'm happy with a more indirect heat in my vermicompost bin. Okay, 3 words of caution when using a seed starting mat to heat your worm bin, especially if you're using the thermostat. 1, if your home or your property loses electrical power, you may need to restart the thermostat or else you're not going to be delivering heat to your worm bin. 2, when placing the thermostat probe into your worm bin, place it just under the surface of your compost, just underneath that mat. If you tell the thermostat to give you 72 degrees, but you bury the probe too far down, it'll try to heat the surface of the vermicompost significantly higher than 72 degrees in order to maintain that temperature several inches below. This will dry out your vermicompost for sure. And 3, this is to keep the lawyers happy. I should point out that you're going to be using an electrically powered product for something other than its intended purpose. Although it's performed perfectly for me, I have to tell you that using a seed germination mat in a moist and closed environment is not how the manufacturers intended you use it. And if you're worried about anything near your worm bin catching fire, as unlikely as it is in as wet an environment as we're talking about, I would suggest not using this technique. Okay, that's out of the way. For those of you not using the urban worm bag, it's all good. There are different sizes of seed starting mats, anything from 10 by 20 inches all the way up to 48 by 20 inches, which is what we used in our Michigan Soilworks CFT. These sizes of mats won't fit certain stackable worm bins, but should work in any setup large enough to accommodate the mat. Now, to the zero waste advocates, the permaculture enthusiasts, and the minimalists, I get it. Lots of you would probably want to opt for a natural solution to vermicomposting that doesn't require buying yet another product and doesn't include needing electricity to keep your worms thriving. I know it feels like cheating, but I'd rather see you cheat and keep your worm bin humming throughout the winter than for you to get discouraged and maybe even lose your worms during a cold snap and stop vermicomposting altogether. All right, gang, I've been doing vermicomposting now for a little over 10 years, and I've made every mistake in the book. I get a lot of emails from new vermicomposters who are struggling with the same things I did. So I created a short, easy to read guide showing you how to steer clear of the most common rookie vermicomposting mistakes that I made. You should see a link on your screen right about now. Go ahead and click it to sign up for our email list, and you can get that guide immediately. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.